Do you have any questions, any comments before we talk about things? Josh?
Felt prepared going into the question, where over the course of the week I had many questions that came up, and I feel like when I got to it, they didn't seem to have any depth, and even the one that I submitted didn't.
Yeah.
It was lacking. Do you have any bias or judgments around that? I imagine it will get easier as we progress.
When I met my first wife, she was so amazingly interesting. My entire life revolved around her. Then after some minutes, she was so uninteresting. Then I met my second wife. Oh man, she was really interesting for a minute. And then after being married for, 15, 16 times, I asked myself, well, things used to be so interesting and all of a sudden they lost their meaning. Why? I think whenever you become aware of certain things, especially your own situation in life, as your perspective, it widens, begin to see things more. The things that used to be valuable, meaningful, become less so. I'm probably the oldest person in this room, 60. But when I go to Roseville to visit my parents, especially my father, who's 90, I don't speak about age. I don't speak about the aches that I have in my body because of my father's presence. He doesn't complain. I have no right to complain either. Sometimes when you find yourself in, I suppose, the presence of certain people, the things that used to be interesting, they no longer are. You find yourself small, insignificant, irrelevant. And so, there are lots of different reasons. But we have 15 weeks. We probably won't get to any of them. Anyone else? And the truth is, by the time you figure out the question that is quite right for you, you wouldn't ask it. Any of you in this class have ever heard of Jiddu Krishnamurti? You have? How? Just kidding. Around the late 1800s, there came an organization by the name of Theosophical Society. It was founded by a Russian woman and I think an American English man, Henry Alcott. Those of you who came in late, make sure to let me know that you came in late so I don't drop you accidentally. So the Russian woman, Helena Blavatsky, after having read the Old Testament, New Testament, Rig Veda, Dhammapada, came to realize that every 2,000 years there's supposed to be a neo-Messiah, a world teacher that speaks the language of the people of the time, knows the issues of the people of the time. The truth is, Plato is not going to help us. His ideas may be exotic, but he wasn't around porn. He wasn't around drugs. He wasn't around violence the way we see it today. So the ideas he had about beauty, about justice, are not relevant for us. So that's what a world teacher is. And so they went around the world to look for a world teacher. And the competition was ultimately about two people. I think Christmas Humphreys, who was English, and Jiddu Krishnamurti, who was about only 11 years old. They adopted him, took the father to the court so that he would have no power over his kid anymore. His mom, of course, had passed. And they put him in a cave of sorts. They put a gate around him, make sure no one unclean would ever be around him. Unclean in body, unclean in mind, unclean emotions. There were many instances where, for example, if you're drinking coffee from your mug, I can't come over there and touch your mug because the energy that lives inside me, and most of it is poisonous, is going to contaminate your mug. You're going to touch your mug, put the mug to your lip, drink coffee, and then the poison that lives inside me now contaminates you. They groomed him, and he had all sorts of strange experiences. Ultimately, he came to realize that since truth is a living organism, no one can have a hold of it. Jesus had access to truth. He died, and truth died with him. You can't pass it along. Wisdom is non-negotiable. It's non-transferable. And I remember when I met him, he died in 1986, and he died a miserable death, and he lived a miserable life. He had come to realize that the West, especially America, is this powerhouse that is leaking all of its poison into all these cultures, and India has become yet another victim of the superpowers. We were once sitting in a courtyard, and he asked me if I have any questions. I said, yeah, I don't have many questions. I have one question, but you can't answer that question. And I guess the point I'm trying to make is when you come to a place in your life where you know what your question is, it's like you know that you want to buy a Toyota. You're not looking for a Honda, you're not looking for a Tesla, you're not looking for a minivan or a large van, you're just looking for a tiny little sedan. Once you know what it is that you want, all other things become irrelevant. When you come to your question, whatever that question may be, it means that you've gone through maybe 20, 30, 50 years of asking questions that seem to be relevant, meaningful, useful. And now, after being seasoned by time, by space, by experience, you realize now you have a question, but that question belongs to you. It's very, very intimate. And no one can have access to it. It's something I shared with my class yesterday. It's a saying by James Baldwin that if you want to have a conversation, you need to reveal yourself. And I think it took many, many, many years for James Baldwin to reveal himself, to be able to. First, you're black in America. Second, you're also gay. Third, your father is very religious. Fourth, you have no idea what to do with your blackness in a country such as this. You have no idea what to do with your sexual orientation in a country such as this. Then you go to France. You're amongst poets and artists and dreamers. And you come back and you get into these ridiculous debates with Caucasians. And then there comes a point where he becomes very, very quiet within. And then when he has interviews, when he has conversations, then he can reveal himself for who and what he is. Sure, he drank a little bit, he did some drugs, but nevertheless. But it took him a long time. And that's what a question really is. You have to go through many layers of desires, ambitions, what you find to be valuable and meaningful, to come to realize that almost everything that you have accumulated psychologically, emotionally, they're completely meaningless. And then you go on this quest to find what's actually meaningful. And that's a very, very dramatic event in your life. Because without questions, you have no ambitions, you have no purpose, you have no value. You go out because of your wife. You go out because of your kids. You buy things because of the house and the home you've created. Once your wife and your kids have no longer any value for you, once they no longer serve a purpose, you say, well, she's going to go shopping. Why the hell would I want to go shopping with her? And all of a sudden, little by little, you have all these gaps and holes that creep into your life. And after a while, the dam has broken. There is nothing left. And you look at it and say, I'm out. But why? I'm out. Don't you love me? I do, but I look at you and I feel absolutely nothing. I'm out. And it may be fun, somewhat traumatic as well, but then you kind of go out and say, okay, after you've experienced and felt what it means to be alone and how it feels to be lonely, you say, maybe it's time for me to date. But you can no longer bring yourself up to ask ridiculous questions on the date. What do? You know, you go for the jugular. And there's a passage in the Quran, which is the Bible of the Muslims, that if there is a prayer that any human being should have, is that we should never be tested. Because if you are, you will fail. It reminds me of a story my brother shared with me yesterday. A son goes to the father and says, Dad, I'm getting married. And the father looks at the son and says, Son, are you sure? Yes, says the son. Are you positive? Yes. You think you have all the tools, resources? I am. And the father looks at the son and says, You're wrong. The son says, No, Dad, I'm right. You are wrong. And the son gets really, really upset. After like 5 minutes of back and forth, the father looks at the son and says, See what I told you, son? You're not ready. Because in a marriage, whenever your wife says you're wrong, you say, Yes, honey, I am. And that's true in all aspects of life. Yes?
Are we going to go over the videos?
No. Do you have a question about them?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to go over the videos.
Which one? I can't. No. Anyone else? No one? You want me to go over the videos?
It made me greatly
Happy.
It would be a pleasure.
Pleasure.
Sure would.
Oh. So anyone else before we talk about all the videos?
Yes, all the videos. I would really appreciate that.
No one? Really?
You can start with the Socrates. How do you say it? Socrates, love.
Socrates, love?
On nature of love itself.
Oh, I can't do that.
But you can start whichever one you want. In order.
Okay. With some apologies to Talia, because she's taking my ethics class as well. And for those of you who may take more classes from me in the future, should I still be alive,
I think you will be alright. You'll be alright.
I repeat myself quite often, and just in case you get bored, know that repetition is the key. For those of you who like to play an instrument, if you go back, stretch your memories back to the time of learning how to become relatively proficient, you keep repeating the same notes over and over and over again. The very fact that you're able to write is because you learned the alphabets and you wrote them down again and again and again. The same with walking, talking, running, and eating. So just in case I repeat myself 1,000,000 times and you say to yourself, well, I've heard that already, that may be so. You have heard it. But what you've only heard are noises. You just hear noises. It takes a time for you to be able to pay attention to some of the keywords in the very many noises that you hear. And then you begin to listen to some of the stuff, some of the noises. And then out of the many noises that you hear, you have some words that trigger you. You listen only to them. And then when you listen to those key words, then you begin to hear The problem with hearing is that you project your own experiences onto what it is that you're listening and hearing. You're not really listening to me, you're just listening to your own imagination, and that doesn't do much for me. So the point I'm trying to make is just because you sit here, you ask questions and you listen and you hear, it doesn't mean you understand, it just means you're listening and hearing and all that. Sounds okay?
I'll ask.
Sure.
Do you feel that with introspection and with this kind of thinking that you continue to answer your own questions in your head and second guess yourself? Then the next piece of that would be, would you find that having an emotional aspect to it, a charged aspect to it, would be a way to focus your question in your head? Do you delve into the emotion of it, or should you be more analytical in your thinking?
Introspection is something we talked about, I think, the first or second day of this class. If you happen to be an introvert, a feeler, introspection comes naturally. It doesn't mean that you understand what the hell is happening to you. It just means that you're a feeler. Everything touches you in a very weird way and you're extremely emotional. And then your parents have to slap you constantly to just calm down. If you are a thinker, and the truth is, there comes a point in all of our lives where if you want to live in a civilized society, if you want to live amongst people, you got to get rid of your emotions. No one really cares for you going nuts every 5 seconds. We don't like these people. They harass us, abuse us, and we have a tendency of getting rid of them. So there comes a point where you are forced to become civilized. And the truth is, you may not enjoy your job, you may not enjoy this class, but if you want to graduate from Laney, you keep your emotions inside you. If you don't like your boss, pretend that you like him. We are in the pretending game. From the moment you are born, well, not from that particular moment, but later on, to the time you die, if you want to survive society. So we lose the ability to be introspective because it doesn't become useful for life. You know, I mean, sure, you're married, sure, you and your wife have a conflict. Yes, you can be introspective, and upon introspection, you can come upon certain truths, but you can't share those truths with your wife. So you have no choice but to lock those truths inside you with all the emotions that they come with. Are you repressed? Absolutely. Will at some point you explode? Maybe. So introspection in the real sense, meaning of the word, is you go through life living on the outside. There's a breaking point. Nothing about your life works. Nothing about the history you've made with life works. Things crash down and you find yourself در این شب سیاهم گم گشته راه مقصود از گوشه برون آی ای کوکب هدایت. That every human being, and I'm not quite sure at what point it comes to us, some breaking points are really big and some are very, very tiny. But when you break, you're consumed with darkness. You don't see any light. We call it depression. And you can laugh it off, you can be an ass, you can be stupid, it doesn't really matter. But, you know, people can know when you're depressed, when that depression has turned you into a savage, you know. And there is this prayer that you have when you're depressed, and you don't have to be religious, that you say, I'm looking for someone who can guide me, someone, something, to bring me back to life, to pull me out of this dark cave. And when you come out, then you kind of go on this quest to learn this craft called introspection. Introspection means you take something from the outside that has triggered you, and then you want to understand why it's there and why it has power over you. So the idea of self-agency or free will, as long as you're a puppet, as long as you're pushed around, moved around by outer circumstances, there is really not much hope for you. There comes a point where you say, okay, I want to examine, and that's what introspection is. You take the stuff inside, you break them out, break them down to see what lives inside them. Now, it doesn't mean that the outcome is going to be good, because when you break anything down, the smell is going to come out. You're going to feel, it's because you see, and then depending on your capacity, your support system, the tools that you have, if you're able to overcome all the things you see, to be able to detach yourself from the emotions and just look at something and examine it. I'm going to talk about today, because many of you assume that you're ready for these ideas and you're ready for this class and you're ready for the videos and all the messages that they contain. But the truth is, none of us, myself included, are anywhere close to them. There was an American psychologist named Abraham Maslow. And I usually do this the first couple of days of my classes because I want to make sure people know where they are in life. And that depends on how honest they are, how sincere they are, how self-aware they are. If you have all these ridiculous assumptions about yourself, then there is no hope to you or any of the things that we talk about in this class or other classes. You know, Abraham Maslow was one of the great American psychologists. He hated his mother. I mean, hated his mother with a vengeance, despised her, called her a bitch on many, many occasions. And you would assume that a psychologist, a therapist, a man who has come up with hierarchy of needs, who talks about self-awareness, would at a certain point in his life stand back and say, you know, my mom was an immigrant from Russia. They had nothing. Her marriage was awful. Her kids were awful. Her temperament was awful. Maybe I should just forgive her before I die. But no. He didn't have the capacity to forgive this woman. He also despised his father. Until, of course, you know, his parents parted ways, they divorced, he remarried, the wife died, and he moved in. And for the first time, Abraham and his father became good friends. And the point I'm trying to make is not even the best, the brightest minds who are in the business of introspection, of observation, of reflection, are able to detach themselves from certain parts of their own self and their experiences with life. They remain bigoted, biased, prejudiced, and forever angry. Yes, Kruna.
Yeah, that was initially going to be my question, and I realized I that it just wasn't possible. Is it possible to live one's life with, or look at one's life without the bias you feel from having understanding? You know?
I think all of us have moments of clarity. It's moments. You know, like you're usually in a crappy mood, but you have moments.
It's clarity until the next moment of clarity. And I go, I'm so.
Yeah, it's called moments. Yeah, it's called moments.
Okay.
Moments. You know, it's like in our culture, when you just run into someone, especially here at Laney or anywhere else, when you are in the elevator, going to your office or coming down to the first floor, if there is anyone sharing the elevator with you, look at them, you gaze into their eyes and you say, hello. I used to do that when I came here. Then I realized that that's not part of the Western culture, especially the American culture. You know, and you're kind of anxious because culturally you're burdened by this thing. That look at this person and say hello, but they're just like looking away. They don't want to be harassed. They don't even want to look at you. So after a while you say, well, fuck them. You know, and that's how I treat all of them now. I just look down, don't look at them, don't talk to them. Once in a while there are moments someone walks in and says, hi. I say, hey, you want to come to my office? I'll make you a cup of coffee. So you have moments, okay? If you want these moments to be more frequent, now remember, inspiration is not very difficult. Listen to Miley Cyrus, you'll be inspired. Listen to Dave Chappelle, you'll be inspired. But just because you're inspired, it doesn't mean that inspiration is going to stay with you for a long time. It's just some fluid and a charcoal that goes up in flames, and then it dies. And it dies because life is complicated. Inwardly, you're harassed by your history, by the emotions. Outwardly, you're harassed by the business of life. So nothing that's good is going to stay with you for too long, unless you're just a professional human being in the business of reflection and observation. Yeah,
It's like a joke or something?
probably.
Okay. I don't know if I take it seriously.
Oh, you should never take me seriously.
Yeah, I'm not taking it seriously.
Good job. Yeah. Chandler.
About like introspection and like the ideas of like clarity and stuff. Is enlightenment really a possibility, or is it just like after coming to a point where you fully realize yourself and know how to react?
Enlightenment?
Yeah.
Yes. You know, the West is a funny place. I shouldn't say the West. America is a funny place. And Americans are funny people. Not because they're like humorous, funny. They're funny because they're so disappointing. That whatever good that the world has ever created, when it arrives to America, it becomes transactional. It becomes a business model. Consider yoga. You know, everywhere you go in Oakland or Berkeley, there are like people walking with yoga mats. And you say, where are you going? Towards my enlightenment. Oh, okay. And they come around saying, you should try Bikram yoga, you will see the Buddha. Oh, okay. Add to the fact that during the 1960s with the hippie revolution, people did a lot of drugs and they had visions, and then they wrote their own Bible. The way to enlightenment is LCD or LSD or weed or this or that. And then they begin to advertise it. Oh, you don't need to meditate. Oh, you don't need to read. You don't need to think. Just smoke. And then you'll see Jesus sitting next to you. And he'll whisper in your ears wisdoms. America is a how-to culture. It's like IKEA. You want a table? Well, go to the basement, aisle 55, shelf 28, take it home. There's a pamphlet, go through it, and you'll have a bookshelf in like an hour. Enlightenment, read a couple of books, there you have it. If that's too difficult, do therapy. After a year, you'll figure things out. If none of those things work, well, weed. Download the app. I'll tell you a couple of stories. It's your pick. I can either do Buddha or I can do Jesus.
Buddha.
We'll do the Buddha because we've talked about Jesus enough in this class. We'll talk about him more, of course. This is how enlightenment is reached. Okay, my young friend? You live in India about 3,000 years ago. Is it capitalism? No. Is it industrialized? No. People are simple. They live in a town of maybe 500-600 people. Relationships, very, very intimate. No one is depressed. No one lives in isolation. Whatever you have is shared with other people. No one walks around lonely. Okay? He had great parents. He had a great religion. His father was rich. He had money. And he told him that when I die, you're going to have all the money. And I'm a king. When I die, you'll take over. His life was set. Then they got him married around the age 18 and a half, maybe 17, maybe 2. A few months later, he had a son. You got great parents, you got great people, you got a great culture. The religion gives you meaning, identity, value, purpose, moral codes. You're married now, you love your wife, and you have a beautiful son. Sure, you married this woman because she was attractive. Sure, you had sex and the byproduct is a kid. Fine. But now that you have this son, you can't but love him. There comes a point in his life, Abi, oh, hi, how are you?
How are you?
I am good, how are you? You guys don't have any chips or candies or anything? Useless. People are just so useless.
Like your daughter?
Yes.
Students get younger every year.
Yeah.
That's cute. First time I ever had a kid, but.
And so one day he goes out. I mean, remember, you have a 20-year-old kid. There are no cracks in his life. He needs no therapy. He is intact. He is healthy physically, psychologically, emotionally, and intellectually. I don't think you fully understand what that means. Everything about his life is good. Everything. But since no human being is perfect really on the inside, one day he goes out and he runs into a guy like me. He says, Amir, oh, what happened to your hair? You know, you get old, you lose your hair. You have wrinkles around your eyes. What the hell is that? You know, you get old. 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 What do you mean old? I am Chandler. Never gonna get old. Never gonna die. Never gonna get sick. The stuff that happens to you is never gonna happen to me. It's like 60% of marriages end up in divorce. But you get married. Why? You're exempt. There is a hurricane coming your way, but no. Like those 3 little piglets, you have built yourself a house made with straws. Your house is never going to crumble. Yes?
Then what happened was that
No.
the palace made sure that no one was allowed to come in. That
Yes,
was
yes,
suffering.
yes,
They
yes,
didn't
yes,
want
yes,
him to be
yes.
exposed to suffering.
Yes, yes, yes.
And then one day he went out and he saw someone sick.
Yes, yes, yes,
And
yes.
he felt bad.
Yes, 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 yes.
What you're
Yes.
saying didn't happen.
I'm sorry?
Everything you're saying didn't.
Yeah, I know. I lie all the
You
time.
might make this stuff up.
I am. I have to. I'm a philosopher. That's my job, to make up stuff. Now,
No, what happened? You just feel.
now. Okay, stop it, all of you.
No, he is lying. That's not what happened.
Now,
You didn't meet an old man with. That's not.
now what happens is you go home and he begins to ask himself, be quiet. He begins to ask himself, am I going to get old? It's like, I love this woman. Will I end up in a divorce? Should I do a prenup? You don't understand how devastating this question is. I was teaching at a place called Sierra College. 19,000 students, beautiful school. In year 2000, there was only 1 African-American student in the entire school. Do you know what happens when you're the only African-American swimming in the ocean of whiteness? Well, what is it that people want? People want confirmation. They want to belong. They want to be liked. Malcolm X did this desperate thing of dyeing his hair orange. And even when he was called the orange poodle, he liked it. He had friends. Do you know how difficult it is to look yourself in the mirror when you go to the bathroom of this campus and say to yourself, I am black, I have a history? Do you really think that knowing that will help you survive the school, the students, knowing the history, knowing how you have to deceive yourself to just live on that campus, to breathe on that campus? We are the sort of organisms that lie all the time because the truth is far too painful. Not even Maslow could do it in regards to his mother. It was far too painful.